Hello, I am your everyday average Jonathan. Join me this week while I take this and turn it into this. What is called a Bec de Corbin. Hello, I am your everyday average Jonathan. I'm an ordinary guy with ordinary tools making extraordinary items. I'm a self-taught craftsman. I'm an amateur blacksmith and a novice woodworker. I have no professional training but your basic assortment of tools that I've cobbled together over the years. My goal each week with the projects that I make is to demonstrate that anyone with a sense of curiosity, a basic assortment of tools, a lot of hard-won knowledge, and a lot of determination can take on and accomplish projects that you might have thought otherwise were out of your reach or too difficult or too outlandish even. The projects that I make each week tend to be fantastical, echoing times of a forgotten yore, whimsical even, things like weapons and armor, structures, practical items, and even furniture. This week, I'm really honored to make a project for one of my YouTube subscribers on my YouTube channel who has been a really ardent supporter of mine, and he's always given me comments that sort of get my mind going. He's constantly offering up different perspectives, a lot of attaboys, and a lot of support to the channel that I'm making. And so I just approached him and I asked him, hey, why don't I build something for you? I'm kind of treating this like a commission, but he didn't commission me. I commissioned myself on his behalf. And I didn't know what he was going to say. And then he said, cool, well, I would love it if you made me something called a Bec de Corbin, which translates in French to the Beak of the Crow. And it is a high medieval weapon that is similar to a warhammer, which I've already made a warhammer. And well, little did I know that in talking with him, A, he's got great taste, and B, he's got a lot of opinions, and C, he had all sorts of design aesthetic elements and things that he wanted to see, all of which are really, really cool. He's not giving me carte blanche, which is just fine, but this is going to be a difficult build. I'm going to have to probably actually make some certain tools for this project. But without further ado, we are at the shop, so let's get started. As I do every winter, I have to load up the ATV, mount a plow to it. I had to build this plow. It didn't come all made, but thankfully it mounted up just fine. And it's prepared for what's coming. We have a lot of snow that's probably going to hit us this winter, and I'm not looking forward to any of it, but again, this plow is essential for me to keep my driveway clear. Okay, I find this really interesting. The Bec de Corbin or Bec de Corbeau is the beak of the raven, the beak of the crow, and it is a polearm. It is very, very similar in shape and function to what would be called a warhammer. Again, I've made one of those before, and I will show you some pictures here of the warhammer, which is tended to be a one-handed implement. But the shape and the function is extremely close to the Bec de Corbin. The only difference that I can spot, well, there's two. One is that the Bec de Corbin is a polearm. It's going to be on a long arm, somewhere between 4 and 5 feet. And it was designed for, instead of a hammer-headed use, which you'll see me making a hammerhead here, it was designed for the beak of it, the point of it, the hook to hit first, to penetrate armor, to penetrate a gambeson, and do damage with the hook. So to protect the identity of my friend and subscriber, I'm not going to use his real name, but Todd is what it rhymes with. Now, the metal that I selected for this project is some of the hardest metal I've ever encountered. And notice my Stanley DeWalt angle grinder smoking there. Well, I torched it. It is no longer functional. I'm going to have to go out and get another one. Luckily, I have a different one on hand. But cut out what is going to be the beak, what is going to be the Bec, and go ahead and profile that, sand it down. It does need to be bent, and I did make these tools. I'm proud of them. They're functional. They're going to do the job. They weren't perfect, but as you see here, I was able to lay what is essentially an elongated diamond in cross section across these, and go ahead and make this slightly bent. Again, it wasn't perfect, but it was pretty good overall. I did have to do a little bit of reshaping on this profile because right now it just looks like it has a bent. I want it to have more of a curve. But here's going to be the main head on this Bec de Corbin, essentially the main part of the hammerhead. I wanted to profile it a little bit as you see me doing here. And then I was just going to drill a hole and get it so that it's going to fit a handle really well. Quite a lot of drilling, quite a lot of die grinder use here, as you're going to see, but in the end I wanted it to also have a diamond headed cross section, and it came out great. My friend and subscriber Sod with a T, to protect his identity, would be proud of this. He wanted this to have I would call it a Jonathan aesthetic, which is going to be hammered, which is going to be worn look. I'm going to put copper accents and impregnate them into this. I think he's going to love it. I'm not certain quite why, but I decided I wanted to have some little in-between intermediary piece of metal between the beak itself and the eye of the hammer, so to speak. I don't think it did anything. It just probably wasted a little bit of time. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to make the actual hammer face the opposite side of the beak, and I'm using another extremely hard piece of metal that I just had laying around, and I'm going to go ahead and bevel each end as you see here, and then I cut down at a diagonal across the face of this on each side. So I'm just going to spread this out slightly, not too much. I just want it to have a little bit of Jaws look. When you look at this straight, it actually looks like one of those worms from the movie Dune when they open up their mouth, at least one of the movies, probably from the 1980s, not to date myself too much, but it's pretty cool. I think it's going to turn out good, and it's going to have an interesting aesthetic to it. I do dig how this looks, how this is turning out, and when I couple it together with the Bec portion, it's going to be a really, really interesting, very stylized looking thing. Now my friend Claude, but disguises identity, it's actually not Claude, and take away the C and add a t sound, and that's he did ask for a spike on top of this. He asked for the spike to be about 7 inches, about the same length as the Bec portion. And here you go. I'm just going to be cutting out this spike. I'm going to make it kind of segmented looking, so it's going to have more of a thorax, sort of like the stinger to a wasp or the body of a wasp. I'm also going to impregnate this with copper like I've done on the other portions of this Bec so far. The strapping as well is going to be impregnated with copper. And now, because I'm not the world's best blacksmith at all, I'm just welding this face, this hammer face, straight to the actual Bec. I love when I have snow for one reason, and pretty much one reason alone, and that is I can cool metal off pretty quickly. Now, again, like I've done with the other portions of this item, I have a trademark, I suppose, which is I wrap a little copper wire around this, get it super hot, put borax flux on it, throw it back into the forge, let the copper melt. At the same time the copper is melting, the steel is getting red hot. And as I mentioned before, this steel was extremely hard. I don't know what it was specifically, but it is a very high carbon, very hard steel. So I'm going to put this straight into the oil. Normally I don't do that, but with that copper impregnated wire now in and pooling onto this, it's going to make a good effect to have the quenching. All right, now it is time to find some strapping, some metal banding, some strapping to attach this head to the wooden handle. My friend Trod without the R to protect his identity, he did ask for this specifically, and I found that this is fascinating. The strapping that I'm making here, I'm going to make it a little bit stylized, give it kind of a medieval heraldry, for it. But in doing so, I wanted to put these two halves of it completely together, sandwich them together with a clamp, and actually carve into both sides at the same time so they look mirrored and they look uniform. That turned out great. It works really well that way. The other thing that's fascinating is the way that I'm going to attach this, which you'll see here in a little bit, is the straps are going to go down the lateral sides, not fore and aft, but down the lateral sides. I don't know if that's the best way to do this. The more I think about it, I think I should have done it fore and aft. You also saw me texturing the straps because my friend did ask for this to be textured and hammered look. But now you see both of the faces, the pointy bits, if you will. That's what they're actually called. I don't know if you guys knew that, but the pointy bits is what they're called. They're ready to go. Now I'm just going to concave this strapping slightly so that it nestles over the wooden handle that I'm about to make here. Very hammered, very stylized, very rustic and pitted looking. Now I'm going to grab this handle of something that I've had laying around. I'm going to grab the old table saw, bring it up here, and I'm going to make this almost diamond shaped. It's going to be squared with some bevels here, and forgive what's going on with my camera there. Somehow the aura, or I think I wiped the camera lens incorrectly. But I'm just making geometric block shapes here, and I'm welding them to the face of each other, getting them all pinned out together. One of the other facets that I have seen about some of the Bec de Corbins or Bec de Corbins that I've seen is they will have spikes on the lateral sides of the face, of the hammer face. So these old railroad spikes that I have, I just cut them off, and I'm going to go ahead and drill them out and tap them and make it so that I can actually tighten these onto the face before I weld them. It's another way of sort of capturing this. And again, my camera, as you can see, I didn't wipe the lens correctly. Forgive me for that. When it's really cold outside and snowing and you have your forge going and you have some red hot metal that you're playing with, it's a great way to just keep things warm. And as you see here, I did put copper banding on that, copper wiring on this too. So it's giving this sort of irregular, almost at random copperized look. And now I have my girl come on in. She's going to help me a little bit. She's going to help me unwrap the new Stanley DeWalt angle grinder, the other one that I burnt out earlier in the video. Now I have something to replace that with. And all together, here's the strapping and the spike mated on top. Putting the daughter to work. I like that this was a elongated diamond face also on the wood itself, because that makes the purchase and the fact that this may or may not swivel, it makes cutting it out actually a lot easier for me as well. It was just much faster. I think I got it done in one shot. I'm just making a little bit of marks so that I can go ahead and drill this. I'm going to make my own rivets, which I really enjoy doing. As you see me here, I've got this little rivet making tool. You come in, you get the tips red hot, mushroom them out, and away you go. You're going to get that through the other side and do the exact same thing. This is going to be for the spikes. I'm drilling through not just the strapping, but the hammerhead and the wood inside itself. So once the strapping and those spikes were solidified, I was going to put 3 other pretty long rivets through this to make sure I was going to attach it solidly. And then you see that piece of metal. I was going to use that for the butt plate, but notice that smoke that's coming out of my forge there. That metal must have had some crazy coating. I think it was galvanized, which is toxic, but I stayed clear of it, let it smoke itself out for a bit. And now I'm using these tree climbing spurs. They're what your tree arborists, your tree surgeons use when they climb up to a tall tree. They're the inside spikes on their feet and on their boots. I just have several of those laying around. I've always wanted to use them for something, so I was going to make something interesting here, as you'll see. This is the butt plate. I was going to fix those tree spikes on it in a way that looks a little bit like bird's wings, at least to me it does. And I wanted to mushroom out the top end of this butt plate so that it actually has this, I don't know, kind of a look to it that looks as though it has been used more. As you will see later on, I made this what I would call asymmetrical. It does not fit and flow exactly in the same line as the top head. And that was by choice. I just wanted to try something that was slightly different. I don't think I'll do it again. Hopefully my friend doesn't mind too much. And here you have it, the final product. I do like the way this came out. I like the copper tones. I like the way the teeth and the beak and the top horn and the spikes look. It definitely is one of those pieces that begs a conversation when someone sees it, which is really a lot of the intention that I have when I make things is for that exact purpose. It feels like it sort of belongs in the hands of a warrior, the hands of an aficionado. And as you can see, my small and growing weapons collection of things I've made, this is certainly not the entirety of everything I've made, but there it is on the far end, just hanging there, waiting for me to ship it to my friend. But yet again, the wind outside is so loud that I think it's just destroying the sound for this particular video, so forgive me, I'm going to record this inside my shop. This was a lot of fun. It is not something that I would have ever looked to build myself, so I'm glad that my friend and subscriber asked me or told me about this. And on that note, I have to come clean. I can no longer tell a lie. I just cannot live a lie in my friend's name, even though I know I disguised it extraordinarily well to protect his identity. His name is actually Todd. And Todd, I'm really, really sorry that I couldn't protect your identity any farther than this. this, but I cannot go on living this lie, and I hope you understand, Todd. And even though your identity was safe with me, now I'm sure it's also safe on the interwebs as well. Anyhow, straight into it. There's several things about this build that I thought went well and a few things that I would do differently. Todd did specifically ask for a worn look, a hammered look, a hardened look, and also kind of the aesthetic that I typically use, which is those things plus the copper impregnation that I did on the steel. So I think that came out really, really well. Jumping right into things that I didn't do so well is this. The dimensions and the weight of this particular head, I feel like it's on the diminutive side. It feels a little small. That said, I've seen Bec de Corbins or Bec de Corbins that are about this size, but this feels much more one-handed to me. Even with this weight and this base on the end, this does not feel like a polearm at all to me. This feels more one-handed. And when you stand it up, its overall length is probably not much more than 4, maybe just a little bit over 4 feet. So I think when it comes to this weapon right here being a polearm, which is what traditionally Bec de Corbins were, I missed that here. This is more of a one. This honestly, this is much more like a warhammer, but of course a Bec de Corbin would be used with the beak side first. And this beak is really sharp, so it's going to pierce through some armor. It's also extremely hard metal. So all of that's really cool. Now going on down to this base, this point here, I did make this so that it looked almost like, if you look at it from this orientation, that it looks almost like the wings of a bird, thus the Bec de Corbin, the crow's wings. And I like that. I think that turned out pretty cool. I also was trying to do something that was not completely symmetrical with the top. The top faces directly this way, but if you look at this is off center, and I did that very purposefully, just out of curiosity to do something that didn't necessarily flow that way. All of that said, I like the non-symmetrical, slightly off-center look of this, and in some practical ways, it is pretty interesting, because if you were a guard standing post and you wanted something that would actually stay in the ground or planted a piece of wood or something, this certainly could. And if I tried it, it actually stands up on its own, which is not unlike a lot of those tools and shovels that you see the guys on the side of the road with the road signs for construction using. Other than that, this turned out pretty well. I think Todd's going to be really, really happy with it. I have to figure out how on earth I'm going to ship it to him, because he lives several states away, and I'm thinking that's going to be quite expensive. But regardless, thank you for joining me. If you like builds like this that are whimsical, that are eccentric in nature, check out my channel for other builds while I take on not just pieces of art or practical items, but also weapons and armor. And speaking of such things, join me next week. I'm actually going to make what will be the largest cast object, meaning casting as in molten bronze. It will be the largest object that I've ever cast before. And it's straight up just a piece of conversational art. There's nothing else to it. So join me for that. Until then, God bless.